to another episode of Our Point of View. Yes, yes, yes. It is another Wednesday. How are we doing, fellas? How are we doing?
All
Great.
right, all right.
What's going down?
What's going
Everything's
on?
good.
That's good. Tonight, I will be filling in for Mrs. Lewis, Jacqueline Lewis. She's not feeling that well. My name is Mike Sheik, for those who do not know. And first, we have Mr. Captain Jackson over here. How you doing, Cap?
Man, all is good, brother. You know,
Yes,
just
sir. Yes, sir. Good to see you always. Then we
man,
have the one
good
and
to
only
be
Mr. Ron Peters.
All right. How's it going?
Pretty good, sir. Pretty good.
Good.
And last but not least, we have Mr. Leon Peacock. How are you doing, sir?
All right, brother. Good to see you. Good to meet you.
Yes, sir. Nice to meet you. Likewise. Likewise.
I'm
Well,
glad you said last, like the Browns, right?
he's throwing shots
I'm sorry,
already.
I couldn't help myself.
We both be positive, man. We're talking about Father's Day and Father's Day. You throwing shots. But hey, let's dive right into it, man. Guys, tell me about your best Father's Day experience, man. Like what's the best experience of being a father right now?
Well, I'll kick it off.
Okay.
For me, it's always hearing, especially as kids get older and they reflect back, and you really get a sense and feel for what it was, their perception of what you were like as a father to them coming up,
Right.
and hear them express those things, and then they turn into things that they have learned and they're incorporating into their lives if they're married.
Okay.
Those stories are always good to hear now.
Okay.
I tell you what, man, it's really amazing just for me, just to really be in that position and to keep that part of it going forward.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of times there tends to be this discussion about breaking generational curses. Well, this is a generational tradition,
Right.
with my grandfather being with his son, my dad, and then my dad being with us, and then me in turn being with my son. So that right there, that's 3-4 generations working right there. So generational, not curses, generational traditions
Right.
of the father being in the house, being around his children, being around his wife, enjoying those moments. So it just makes events like Father's Day, if we use that for example, just makes it all the more better.
Okay. All right.
I think my sons nurture their children from a teaching mode, probably the greatest. I did a lot of teaching when they were little. I didn't want to enforce a lot of corporal punishment, so I would teach a lot. I would read a lot, and I would make them sit next to me, and to see them do that with their children, and their children are small, is one of the greatest blessings to see, because they realize I really taught them early to code switch, and to see them doing it now, they're doing it, and their children are about 2 and 4, and so they're teaching them earlier than I did. So that's the great blessing. Like he said, a generational positive perspective.
Oh, all right. So like, we know that the father has an important role in the household. So like, what do you think the biggest difference is from like a non-father household and a father household? Like what's the biggest difference that you guys see?
I think the one of the things that I see is the man not stepping up,
Right.
perhaps as he should. But I kind of have to dial that back, man, because when I was going through school, I was blessed to have both parents in the house, especially my dad. But man, I got a lot of good partners, a lot of down home friends that just did it in single parent households, and they still turned out all right.
Right.
So, in matter of fact, in some of those cases, the single parent worked out better than the double parent situation.
Right.
In a lot of those cases, and they're good brothers, they're good sisters, they're well-meaning people. It's just that circumstances just maybe took it in a different direction. But so those are the differences as far as our young men go. Just a lot of times, just that leadership. But there's that adage that the one we hear all the time about the village, right?
Right.
So when pops or your dad wasn't there, you had your uncle, or you had your um, maybe perhaps an older brother or an older male figure that helped to guide you and keep you on a good trajectory. So the subject matter is still positive. It's still about men and the roles that they play in our lives, but maybe perhaps from a different perspective. So if it wasn't, if for me, if it wasn't, for me, it was my dad. Maybe for Brother Peters, it may have been an uncle. Maybe for Brother Leon, it may have been the father figure, the older gentleman down the street, or something like that. But it was still a positive role model to keep us on the right trajectory. And if we did sway a little bit, there was someone to help straighten us up and get us back on the path.
Okay. Okay. So I heard you speak about leadership. I know leadership is big in the household. So like what are some things that you preach to your kids and whatnot when it comes to leadership?
So just being able to just being able to, well, first of all, knowing that being a leader doesn't necessarily always mean leading from the front. Sometimes you can do that uh, from the rear, being a good example and knowing things, definitions of certain things, like in honesty and integrity and trust, and what it means to have a relationship, friends and so forth, with both the opposite sex and the same sex. So it really starts very early. It starts with basic fundamentals, and still allowing a child, a young boy, a young girl, to be a child, but to still instill those things as they grow older. Eventually giving more responsibility, eventually letting them know more or do more or say more and so forth, and just growing them and just growing up with them and teaching them along the way, and trying to do our very level best and not miss any steps. It's a lot to do. I have 17 and a 19-year-old, and I'm still learning.
All right.
Still making mistakes, but at the same time I try to learn from my mistakes and show that to my sons, because they're there. They are right there.
Okay. So let's see. So when it comes to the father figure and whatnot, how do we relate that to money? Because I know most of the time the father, they're supposed to be the head of the household and they're supposed to be the breadwinner and whatnot. So when you have to teach what you know about how to take care of a household and whatnot, how do you like guide your kids, or like how do you guide your family, and like what are your like secrets and tips and whatnot to like have a strong financial foundation for the family?
One of the things that I did, because we have a blended family,
Right.
was I wanted to make sure that they understood the value of money, and so that they would understand how important it is to work. So I kind of used it from that standpoint. If you understand the value of money, it's real easy to transition over into why work is important, why you want to try to do your best and perform, so that your income eventually will grow. We have one son here. He'll be 41 this year. He allows his wife to kind of manage the money, and because he doesn't feel he's that great at doing it.
Okay.
So my comments to him has been, you don't always have to be the record keeper, but you should also share in the knowledge of what's going on in the finances in the house. Right. And that everything should be budgeted, should be written down. So in the event that something happens, because it happened to me, my mother passed away very early in my life, and my dad didn't know what to do. Because she kept records and things, it was very easy for me to help him to pick up on what to do financially. So I've tried to pass that lesson on to them so that they would understand. And in their family, you may not be the record keeper, but you certainly should be viewing what's going on with the family, input in terms of what's happening financially. I think the major key to sum up is that, and when it comes to money, you have to have goals. You have to have a vision on where you want your family to be. Do we want a home? Do we want this? Do we want that? And a lot of that starts, I find, very young, junior high school, early high school, setting those financial goals, because those are the things that you're going to try to achieve. if you get out there and you start spending money, and the world is a lot more open to young people than it was, like, let's say when I was your age.
Okay.
Got a daughter going to Vegas this weekend. What? To do what? Just to hang out. I was that age. I was watching kids changing diapers, working 2 jobs. So it's a completely different world. And you can go to Vegas, but then what may be on the horizon? So if you drop $700-800 on a trip to Vegas, what else could be on the horizon? Car repair, tires for the car. So it keeps them from being too spontaneous and living their best life, as they call it. But it also incorporates them having a plan. In case something does happen, I can still go to Vegas, but I also got an emergency fund for the car, for the house, in case one of the kids needs something. I'll fall behind on the rent or the utility bill. So we approached it from a very practical standpoint. And this is something that I also teach in the youth group that I have at our church. And what I do personally in my business on the side is to really go through and teach finance, how to set up the budget for married couples, how to make sure that they pass that down to their children so that we get a lot better with money. And we're just not consumers, but we're also investors in this society.
Okay. Okay. That's dope. And Mr. Peacock, I heard that you said that you started by having your kids sit beside you, like all disciplinary, so headstrong can benefit your kids later on.
Yes, a lot of the students, I'm a school teacher, so I saw that a lot of the students could not self-regulate their behavior. My father is a veteran born 1924. And because he fought in the war, he taught a lot of self-regulation. But I taught it from a different perspective. Like I would just hold them, we'll let them move. And even if I fell asleep, if one of them moved, I immediately woke up. But the goal was to teach them self-regulation so that when they get in the classroom, they can regulate their behavior. What you see today is because a lot of fathers are not there, our students do not know how to really self-regulate their behavior. And so a lot of times they use the term wild out. It's a reactionary personality, and they're wild out in a second that are processing thoughts, going through a level of reasoning, basically. So that's what I taught our students to do, my children to do, so that they'll do it with their kids, pretty much. As far as in the household, one of the things I taught them was there's a corporate approach with, let's say, white brothers use. And I used to believe in it. I came, I saw, and I conquered. The man does everything. Once I came into the foreknowledge of an Afrocentric teaching, I began to say, you want to share with your wife your decision-making. Don't dominate. Teach your kids as they're coming up, because they see you, they will emulate, basically. So I went to a shared mode with responsibility. I went to the final say, so what do you think? Okay, my decision should be based on how the group feels. And I did that because I needed to teach my kids how to code switch, function in corporate America, but function in their home at the same time. Be able to, when you hit the door, don't bring your problems home. So when it comes to the decision-making, I made a change in how we made our decisions.
Okay. So when it comes to, because you said a code switch, so that's basically showing them how to have discipline at an early age. Just teaching them the importance of discipline and responsibility and integrity and whatnot like that at an early age, so that
right, but from
down the road they'll be
a community perspective, because when they watch television, I'm 61. You're raised up seeing a perspective that doesn't really apply in our community. And my father was very down. No say so, no anything. And I decided not to take that approach because I saw where he got it from. And I saw how it affected us. So with the children, you have a choice. But if you make the wrong choice, the repercussions become generational. And that's the main point I wanted them to see. For example, if you start drinking, that can be generational. And so I would never drink in front of them or anything like that, because I knew my family had a lot of alcoholics. And so I wouldn't do things in front of them. Spending money, they saw me just give money to people, give money freely, and they would question me, why do you do that? I said, because you never know your circumstances for tomorrow. But I have been in a foster home. My foster parents were elderly, and they taught me certain principles along the way that I passed down to my children.
And I didn't know that you had father parents. So being that you were not raised by like your biological father and mother, do you see yourself like any different, or like do you think you came up any different, or do you think you still got that guidance that you needed, being that it wasn't from your immediate parents?
Well, I was raised by my parents, but when my mother had a nervous breakdown, they put us in a foster home for the summer. Pop come and get us. And in the foster home, they taught us to save every dime. So imagine you leave a foster home with $50. Your father takes the money and buy enough food to fill up a station wagon. But when I watched his behavior, I began to see why we didn't have a lot of money. So a lot of the behaviors that I learned when I got older, I began to undo a lot of those behaviors in myself as I saw them.
Okay. So let's go back to the finance and money, because I know that you said you had a program, Mr. Peters. You want to elaborate on that and how you incorporate that with your family?
Back in 2002, I started a group at our church. We used to have a group for the girls called Princess, transition program, taking them from young ladies, girls into young ladies. There was nothing there for the boys. And so I attended with my daughter, and I said, there's nothing here for the guys. The girls are learning all these wonderful things, values, etiquette, and all of that, and there's nothing for the guys. So I created a program called Boys to Men. Couldn't copyright the name because it's just too well known, Boys to Men. But basically, the program dealt with some transitional areas that I identified, such as responsibility, leadership, values, table etiquette, sexual purity, money, finance, teen health and hygiene. And this is one where you're really surprised. We were just talking about the beard a few moments ago. And when the era that I came through, grooming was a really big thing for Black men. So if you had a dad in the house, that was one of the things that he did. He did take time out to show you how to groom, how to shave properly, haircuts, things of that nature. So teen and hygiene. And I was very surprised at how off a lot of the kids that I dealt with in my program, how they were off in terms of hygiene. And so we had that program. Also, we had communicating with others in authority. Usually around 16 or 17 years of age, they start to get jobs. And you find if you go through McDonald's, one week you find a different crew of kids there the next week. And usually it could be because McDonald's doesn't pay, but it could also be because they really don't know how to communicate and interact with people in authority. So we dealt with what's the right way to express maybe your dissatisfaction with something that you have to do. What's the way to express, I'm going to be late coming to work? What's the way to express maybe something that your parents did that may have made you feel bad? What's the best way to express that? Because what they see in behaviors out in the street are different than what we want them to exhibit when they're at home, when they're at school, when they're at work, when they're other places. And so trying to teach them that style of communication was one of the things that we focused on. Program usually ran for about we started out doing it for a year, then we put them in there for 18 months. And then we graduated them after that. We gave them the kente cloth as a way of transition. And then they demonstrated to their parents what they gained from the program to help them to move forward. I'm very proud to say that as I look on Facebook, and I've been doing this, like I said, since 2002, many of the guys are married with children, and to see them nice young men and ladies married, a lot of the pro things, hey, Brother Ron, I remember you showed us how to brush our hair, the importance of flossing, the importance of brushing your teeth. Even during the pandemic, you still have to brush your teeth.
That's right.
Things that those little things that we surprised are lessons that were given to me when I came through, and I just tried to pay back, or pass it forward to young men that I knew coming up. Whether they had parents or not, it really didn't matter, because even though the father was in the household, if they had not had that training and saw those behaviors, it was kind of like he wasn't there in terms of those things. And so, so that's kind of what we did. And the one motto that we live by is that we teach what we know, we reproduce who we are, but what type of instruction and teaching are we doing? So we've really focused on that teaching aspect because that was an area we saw was very weak for a lot of kids. They just didn't understand why you do certain things. And as I think as Leon mentioned, the repercussions of making bad decisions. And when you're in that decision process, how do you make good decisions for a good outcome?
When it comes to because right now I have a friend and whatnot, and she has 2 children, and I'm always telling her like don't just be so lenient when your son does like certain stuff, because the world's not gonna be, and like sometimes moms they think dads are too hard, but no, it's like you be too hard because the world's not gonna be nice to you. So like, why do you think I should be nice to you? Like I gotta show you why. So that you don't just think, oh, I'm just yelling and fussing and whatnot. So,
well, I think you
so like
everything.
Do you all?
Everything starts with expectations.
One thing you're going.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Okay.
That better? Everything starts with
I believe
expectations.
Yeah.
And I think even in the types of households that we deal with, the types that I had when I was growing up with in a housing project, there were still expectations. And I think when those are made clear to children as to what they are, then when somebody goes out of bounds, it's a little easier to check them. If somebody doesn't know what the expectations are, then you have to get into a lot of other modes of trying to get it across. I didn't know what you were talking about. And having been a teacher for 8 years, that was one of the things I operated on. First thing I always did with every class, and you can ask your mom, was when they entered the room, there was a list of do's and don'ts, expected behaviors in the class. So when you come in the room and I say, open your book, you're to have a book. If you don't have a book, here's the process to get one. You should have a pencil and a notepad. If you don't have one, here's the process to get one. If somebody went outside of that, then it gave me the opportunity to correct so that you can get to hopefully self-correction.
Right.
But when you don't have any expectations around things, we all know it can go all over the place, and people, and even if you do, people still want to challenge you, but it's a lot easier to come back to say, just like the law does. You see that sign that says 55 miles an hour. What were you doing? And then you kind of look dumb at that particular point, right? I was a little faster than that. So knowing what the expectations are and we have to set, so this way I don't have to argue with you or beat you down. You understand what they are, then we can have a conversation around how to meet those expectations.
So being that Father's Day is around the corner, but now, what are some of you all's favorite experiences as a father? Like, what's some one or 2 moments that you'll never forget that you enjoyed as a father?
Wow, that's a tough one.
I believe that one of the sound kind of funny, but one of the most enjoyable moments was just realizing that I am a father, and that especially with two little kings there, 2 little princes as in the guys, not princess, but 2 princes, 2 kings coming up, that this was wow, this is life. This is what life is about, raising a family, and certainly in my case, having 2 young men, raising them to be, upstanding, God-fearing, employable, respectable, caring young men, and all the other, adjectives and so forth that come along in life. But just being in that position, being in the family, and just being thankful for what we have, so or for the space that we're in. We're in a pretty, well, we're in a house, and we've got transportation, and we've got a means in which to do, and we got a roof over our head, clothes in the back, and food on the table. So it's really kind of a humbling moment, because it's not just, it's not just me and my wife. It's us and our young son, and subsequently our second son that we had, but now we're a family unit.
Mhm.
And that's the, as my pastor would say, having the child or making the child, that's the easy part. But
Right.
raising a child, that's where it kicks in. But just being, just knowing that you have that ahead of you, you
Mhm.
know, through faith, you have that ahead of you. So you have that opportunity to experience all of those things in helping in an effort to uh, raise that child in a way that you'll be satisfied with, and that the our Father would be satisfied with, the world will be satisfied with. So just that whole experience, man, was that's the memorable part, and it's different every year. It's different every year.
Now, I just thought of a special one, Mike, that I just wanted
Okay.
to share. As I mentioned, we have a blended family. So when I married my wife, we've been married 31 years. She had three kids, and I had custody of my daughter. So her oldest, he's going to be 41. One Father's Day,
Right.
he shared how I impacted their lives and how me coming into their lives, because he was 9 years old when we got married, and how marrying his mom and changing the course that they were started on as a family after their dad left, how I, marrying me and coming into my life, how that changed his life. And it really broke me into tears, even when I think about it, because you just never think that you really, when as a father, one of the things I find is that reward sometimes is often delayed. When you're a nurturer, you get it right away. Your mother's mother and that type of thing. And then dad, even with my dad, I didn't let him know what he meant to my life, in my life, until I was a pretty much a grown man. And the same type of thing happened here, but it happened with someone that wasn't a biological son, but someone whose life I had been in for a very long time. And to know how special you made somebody's life, that I didn't plan on it. We got married and it happened. That was a very special time.
Okay.
Me, myself, I wouldn't let my children celebrate Father's Day. What I taught them was America functions on what's called conditional love. They celebrate the holidays. And because my father raised me from a very hard perspective, I'm gonna be tough on you because he came through the military. But what I've learned in life before I had kids and I was in my 30s was that's conditional love. Love me every day. And I taught them that you're gonna love me every day. But if you come with me with conditional love, we got a problem. So, and I explained to them, when you have your children, you can celebrate Father's Day and operate on a conditional love. But if I die tomorrow, I want to know that you love me. And so I made sure that they knew you're going to love me every day. I grew up in a household where, and I understand him being hard on me, but he didn't understand that that was conditional love. If I meet the standard, you showering me. But if I don't meet the standard, you coming down extra hard. And then as a male, because I worked in a juvenile prison, I saw all these kids raised the same way I was. And then they would say, Mr. Peacock, you are so soft. I said, you think it's soft, but what I'm doing is loving you, because our world in the hood is from the streets of Cleveland, it's conditional love. And my kids would say, but Daddy, we're not in the streets. I said, you never know where you're going to end up. We live in a suburb. Homes are 300,000. I work 2 jobs to get you there. But if you ever go to the hood, you got to fight every day. And it's all conditional love. That's all you see. What I learned, because I got saved, is to love them every day. And when you love them, you love the hell out of them, to the point that every time they see you, they know he loves me. And that's what I learned. And that's how I treat every kid that came into my classroom, every kid in the prison. I love the hell out of them. I would not let them celebrate Father's Day. I say every day is Father's Day, because if I die tomorrow, you must keep the vision. Whereas my pop, he recognized he was too hard on me later on in life.
Okay. So do you guys feel like there's a big difference of the outcome when it comes to tough love and like I guess softer love, or like just like what's the biggest difference that you guys have noticed?
Watch the students when they get with a girl. Like, I work with a lot of youth in prison, and they all raised on tough love, but at night they were crying. They were crying. And and a lot of staff would not come and nurture and talk to them, or let them just go through. They got to be tough. And I was like, you keep thinking that and they'll get killed quick. I said, teach them to love And then there's a place to stand strong. But in the meantime, you love. And then when you got to stand strong, you stand strong. Like the elder said, when he came into that blended family, he loved the son so tough that it made him say, thank you, this is my dad, even though his real pop had left. So working in the prison, I realized that when them boys are raised hard, you should see them at night, they crying. Big diesel cats, they crying. But in the daytime, they tough as everything. And I was like, dude, you keep living two lives, you're gonna have an unbalanced life.
Show the importance of having balance. And do you think that comes from the dad, like having balance in your life? Because most people, like, they'll say, oh, you can learn this and learn that. What is something that you cannot learn from a mom that you can learn from dad? Like what is that one or two things that you have to learn from dad, you know, if there is anything like that?
I say you have to take it to make it. Like a lot of men, you could smack me, and students saw people come at me and Mr. Peacock, why you didn't retaliate? I make $50,000 on this job. If I lose this job, we go back to the hood, and I grew up in the projects. I say, so as a male, you have to learn to take it. And you don't cry, you might go somewhere else and cry. So I think that a woman, she might break down in front of a kid. And the kids say, that's what a woman does. When I worked in a juvenile prison, a staff did something to me, and I was so angry, they saw tears flow. And the kids said, but you're not supposed to cry. I said, if you keep that up, you'll die of a heart attack. So sometimes it's okay as a man to express himself. But I had been in the church a good 7 years before I got a prison job. So I think some things that a woman can teach, they can nurture, a man can nurture. But they must also teach balance, because our sons are so wound up that they explode when they shouldn't explode. Just maintain your composure. If you look at a lot of the situation with the police, our sons explode when if they just maintain their exposure, their composure, they would have lived through the situation. A lot of mothers can't teach that because they are allowed to cry and break down. And so our sons are taught, just hold it in. But when them boys explode, you see cops go to an extreme and restraining the kid.
You know, but you know, to that point, it excuse me, it is important to have balance. You know, typically the male will have a way in which he will nurture a child or deal with a child, and so will the female, so will a lady, and in that, therein lies the balance. You know, and that I know that me, and I have a sneaking suspicion I'm gonna have to deal with this, but I don't mind being the bad guy. I don't mind being the bad guy because my sons notice that I'm not there to be your friend. You know, the father has always known to be the disciplinarian, not in every case, but the father's known to be, or the male is known to be the disciplinarian, and the woman, the wife, is known to be the nurturer. But if there isn't real communication within the house, that can be skewed. So it's like so for example, if I'm admonishing my son, my wife can still be a nurturer in her way, but if I'm admonishing my son for something that he did, that he needs to recognize that he did and take responsibility for, but then my wife comes around the corner and coddles him and nurtures him and rubs him on his face and tell him it's gonna be okay and all that. Well, is she undermining me? She could be. So then we need to make sure that before that time comes along, and this comes along perhaps before the child even gets here, that we have to have an agreement that despite our personalities, despite our traits, we have, when it comes to disciplining, admonishing, rearing our children, there's got to be one word just escaped me. It, we've got to take one mounted position. There's got to be a concerted effort to be on one accord.
Right.
So
Right.
if I'm admonishing our son, you need to be right there with me. You know, if you're admonishing our son, I need to be right there with you. And there needs to be a united front. That's the word I was looking for. There needs to be a united front to let the child know that, hey, wow, mom and dad are serious. They're not playing. And it's not going to be this playing one against the other. We're not doing that. But and each one has its place. And I think what brother said is important to have that balance, to make sure that you got a little bit of both. You know, you can, if you need to cry one with your son or your daughter, you can do that. And if you need to have a moment with mom, that's good too. That'll make for a well balanced child, and that's what we're looking for. We're looking for balance because certain situations come along with the police, for example. We don't want our young people flying off the handle. Look, as it is already, they don't even have to have an excuse. That's the sad part about it. You can be well mannered, you can be doing everything right, and we're still having to catch HE double hockey sticks under the notion of just the encounter,
Yep.
what they perceive. Doing everything right, compliant, the whole 9 yards. We have the talk, we do the talk. And before the talk even gets started, there's a preconceived notion that this is already threatening based on what someone else is seeing through their eyes and what they believe may be something. And if that dialogue starts off wrong, then the rest is in God's hands for him to handle. Because we do the best we can.
So I guess it's good to always teach your kids how to be preventative and instead of trying to get yourself out of a situation, what can you do to keep yourself from getting into it,
Absolutely. I mean, we do that all the time. I think these brothers will agree. Even from a surrogate point of view, you're mentoring someone else's child or another young man or young lady to our own households. Yeah, I mean, we've seen enough. I mean, I'm but yet a young 53.
You said a young 53.
I'm a young 53, but I've seen a little bit, and certainly no disrespect to my other brothers here in the panel, but they have their experiences too that predate me. So based off of that, we do our very level best to pass that on to our children, and it's not just limited to our boys, our young men. We do this with the women too. And when applicable, when we can, we switch it up, but the guys give the men their perspective, the women give the young girls their perspective because they're both equally important. And we try to have, as brother mentioned before, try to have that balance.
Now I find that what's important, just to kind of add on to what you guys have covered, and you've covered a lot of great stuff. The behavior, getting because everyone watches everyone's behavior.
Yeah.
And in raising a male child in particular, and I'm just not excluding females, just want to focus on the male child for a moment. If that child enters the corporate world, my thing when I entered the corporate world was I wanted to see how other brothers made it, because I'm not white, so I can't go by how a white guy makes it.
Right.
How does another brother make it in the corporate world? And so I looked at people's behavior. And I think we do it instinctively. Sometimes we don't identify it, but even within a household with parenting, as you mentioned, there are times when I'm a nurturer. There are times when my wife is a nurturer. There's a time when she's a little hard. There's a time when I'm hard. But we have to be aware of the behavior when we're in these different roles so that they can see what it looks like from a different perspective. And for example, my wife was speaking to one of the boys the other day, and he's going on and on about his lifestyle. He doesn't feel she made a negative comment about his lifestyle. So he used some language that was inappropriate.
Mm-hmm.
So my question was, Should I jump in this? Because that's my wife. Should I just lay back? Well, I feel confident she can handle it. So I asked her what she was going to do, that type of thing. And she gave me a game plan on how she was going to handle it. But the one thing for sure that he knew was he never saw me exhibit that language or that behavior to his mom. And so he called back. She said, I'm glad you circled back around, because if I had to deal with this, you weren't going to be talking to me for a while. And he knew the self-check was that I never heard this. This sounded really weird. I'm sorry I said that, but I don't think you were hearing me. However he phrased it. But the bottom line was that behavior had never been exhibited. So it was like a foreign land, a foreign space to him at that particular time. And so I always impress upon kids, be aware of your behavior wherever you're at. You mentioned we predate you, Eric. And one of the things we were always taught during that time, no matter whether you were from the projects or whether you're from any community, was always be aware of your surroundings. Yes. And always be aware of your behavior, because you never know who's looking.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
One of the things I did with my father did this drill with me because he did some time. He showed me how to deal with the police. So I taught my son, but I took him to the next level. I said, whenever the cop stop you, no matter what he says, you just yes, sir, no, sir. You just yes, sir, no, sir. But don't say it with an attitude. I said, because once you learn psychology, the cops understand the psychology of the angry black male and how he could be a calm male, but you can initiate it. Well, he thought my way was a sucker way. And I explained to him, living in the South, a lot of cops stopped me. And they thought that I was going to revert to the black male, but I would beat them with no, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Or I would go with the long draw. No, sir. Thank you, sir. And they hated it because it's a mindset. And a state trooper stopped the other state troopers from jumping on me because I was going, no, sir. Yes, sir. And I was huge. So they stopped my son, and he has the same look you have, young man. Okay. And my son, what did I do wrong? And they took him out and they beat him almost to death. And he said, and his mother, like, your way is just too soft. I said, it's a survival mode. I had a job at Ohio State, and a black professor said, you won't be here long. I said, why not? He said, they could see you coming. He said, even when you wear a suit, they know you militant. He said, when you learn the game, you want to survive. And so when I taught my sons, they said in the rap music. So because the rap music then said the cop almost killed him, he survived. And so the thing I tried to tell him was, it's psychology. So cops know how to trigger a good male, but when you've been trained, just maintain your composure. No, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. And he will feel guilty even if the others try to do wrong, because it happened to me. And so I try to tell young males, there's a way to do everything, even when the enemy is at the gate.
What's interesting about that is that I use yes, sir, and yes, ma'am, regardless of who I'm talking to. If I'm at a store, if they're younger than me or older than me, it really doesn't matter, because that was the way in which we engage people. I never called someone older by their first name. I don't go in the store and say, what's up, dog? Hey, how are you, man? How are you, sir? And so my sons, they see that. And when I'm with them, it's like I hear it, but I don't hear it, because they saw me do it. They exhibit the same kind of behavior, like, thank you, ma'am. Really appreciate that. And so, and they say it, I want them to say it with some authority and conviction and confidence in their voice. So, because all I'm doing is greeting you.
That's right.
I'm not becoming your slave. I'm not becoming somebody that you have to feel threatened by. In fact, in sales, what they do is they teach you how to disarm the customer.
Right.
Disarm the customer with certain language and body language. The other thing that I teach them is that when you start, I talk with my hands a lot, so you might see them on here. When you start to raise these up, when you talk to somebody, that's considered an aggressive position posture. So in sales, you learn that you can't do that unless you're trying to make a point, and you may want to keep them a lot lower than sticking them up like this. Mm-hmm. Italians can get away with it.
Right.
Other groups can get away with it. I had a white guy talk to me. We were talking, we're friends. He's all in my face. Man, can you back up a little bit? That's in my community, that's aggression.
Yes, sir.
That'll get you hurt. You gotta give me some space. And so, and then somebody saw me talking, using my hands like this. They said, if I didn't know you were Black, I swear you were Italian because you use your hands so much.
Mm.
I had to learn from, again, watching my behavior, how to get a point across, how, when you want to be threatening, I can know how to turn it on, but most times I can keep it under control. So I don't have to turn it on. So, because I want to open up doors. I don't want to close doors. You know, it's bad enough you got to fight the look of being Black, but you don't want to fall into the stereotype.
That's right.
Everything. And that's what I meant by the behaviors, because we're fighting television, we're fighting music, we're fighting the peers at school. It's more, it's more popular to talk, you know, the language that they're talking than it is to speak the language that's going to get you through open doors. And so, you know, learning that you can integrate. And what I like to see sometimes, a lot of programs, especially the sports programs with a lot of the brothers that played, they integrate some of the language into a description of a play or something that they're doing. So the kids understand there's a place for it, but it can't be the only style of language that you have.
Right.
So let me ask you, where's the balance point in that? Because I mean, hearing what you said, it's kind of funny what the brother said, because I was raised being in California, but with my dad having been born and raised here in Atlanta. Interestingly enough, as I was coming up, we weren't taught yes sir, no sir. We were just basically taught yes or no, and the spirit in which that's delivered. You know, there wasn't any yes, you know, with your eyes rolled or your mouth fixed and all that. No, it was yes, 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 dad, or, you know, yes, mom. And so we didn't have that, the man part on at the end of it, or the sir part on it. But it did pick up once I moved here to Georgia. Interestingly enough, that just kind of got added on to it.
Mm-hmm.
But what's the balance in maintaining that positive attitude, the attitude of gratitude, and being attentive and being respectful, and at the same time not being so far, this don't sound funny, and please, no disrespect, but not being so far to the right, to where it's almost like, man, is your name Kunta? I mean, you don't have to step and fetch it. You know, you don't have to you know, be so like you're ready to do a jig. I mean, because at the beginning, middle, and end of the day, that man puts his pants on one leg at a time, like I do. He's got the same red blood running through his veins as I do. You know, he may just have a feeling of subservientship that I don't have, but at the end of the day, we're still equal. And I know we're not equal, we're different,
Right.
but it's so. But I understand what you're saying. So just where's that balance?
Let me try to just share, Leon. I'll just get with you in one moment. When you look at the way I look at it, I'll always deal with what do I want the desired outcome to be, and so when I do it, my body language is not one of Stephen Fetchit. It's just simply a greeting. You know, people don't say Mr. or Mrs. anymore. You know, if I see somebody, in line, excuse me, miss, you know, I don't say, hey, lady, you know, because that's normally very easy to say, but you never know how people are going to take it. So if my desired outcome is to open a door, then I may look at the surroundings and decide what's the best way to get that done. Because again, at the end of the day, I got a goal. If the goal is to get in there and get something done, fine. But it's never to put on a minstrel show. So I just want to get that clear. That's just the way I was raised. I never gave it up. People that are older than me, I said that to a young girl, said, thanks a lot, man. Really appreciate it. Right. You know, they kind of look at you, and they were more greetings of respect than they were disrespect. And it wasn't the up and down, you know, vision that you have that I'm here and you're here and I got to say this in order to get up there. Right. If I want to get that door open, and I want to get service the way I want, and I want to be treated as everybody else and differently, sometimes I'll shape my language to get that done. because you can shape it the other way and get nothing done.
Right.
You know yourself, you start arguing with somebody in the store, and then next thing you know, security's on you, and they said you said this. And sometimes because, and if you ever want to test this in a room of white people. When we talk, when brothers talk, especially about sports, our voices elevate, we start yelling, we stand up, booyah! We get in each other's face like that.
Right.
A white guy, I was at a graduation yesterday, yelling all over the field. White people turned around normal. I kind of jumped a little bit like, whoa, you know, because I'm used to mere loudness, you kind of get a little alarmed. When we get that way, they get alarmed. It sends off something different. So you have to be aware of your behavior, but also how does your behavior impact and affect other people? Sure. So usually I find that sometimes, and again, desired outcome, if I want it to go smooth, I deliver it that way. When I want you to know I'm not playing and I'm not a kid, I deliver it another way. So that's the balance. What's the outcome that you want? If I want you to know I'm pissed, then I'm not calling you to Mr. and Mrs. Hey, look here, there's a problem. I'm gonna raise my voice.
Right.
If I just want to try, hey, I need to get in there to do that. Can you help me out a little bit? Need to get this coupon so I can get this $50 off. I'm gonna address it that way. So the balance, and what happens sometimes I find with our children, at least in our program here, they didn't have that. They used the same approach all the time. And what it got was, depending on who they used it on, it got many times undesirable results.
Right.
Like they yell at their friends, they yell at their girlfriend, they yell at their mom. That's not the kind of results you want, is to get smacked or whatever the mother decides to do, like ours. He started talking like he was to one of his friends. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna be 40, I'm a grown man, I can say this and I can say that. I said, I'm still your mother. She still demanded that respect. And I try to tell them all, I said, I was a grown man. My father died a year before I was 50. And I still talk to him like I was 13 years old with respect.
Yes, sir.
And he got when we disagreed, Daddy, I don't agree with that. You know, and okay, I understand that, but I never cursed him. I never said, oh, you say it again, man, I'm gonna have to get up and knock you out. I never did any of that stuff. And one compliment that he gave me, he said, everywhere I go, people always tell me how mannerable and how nice my sons are. And he said, you don't know, as a Black dad, how that makes me feel.
I did it because when I first came to South Carolina, they explained to me, with your size and your demeanor, the state troopers will stop you. They'll shoot you and throw you in a swamp. And I thought, well, if he don't kill me, I could swim. Principal, I'm gonna smack. Well, we got gators here. So every time they stop me, I went to, yes, sir, no, sir. And the one state trooper, he would hit my car with his billy club. I got a brand new car. So I said, I'll fix him. He stopped me. He said, boy, didn't I tell you not to speed through? I said, yes, sir. You told me, sir. And he said, he leaned down and got in my face. If you ever do that to me again, I wasn't around when your people were slaves. So I learned psychology early, and I learned how to disarm them. And my sons felt that was a minstrel. So I said, all right. I said, if you don't understand that white men have a fear of you, that when the moment you move, they can shoot you. And because I'm from the projects, I learned the code switch in the hood. What's up, my brother? How you doing? But when I'm out in corporate America, I speak a different language. I had to learn it to survive. That's basically it. White officers stop me, yes, sir, no, sir. Minstrel dance, because I know I might not make it home. A cop took me in a room as a kid and threw bowling pins at me to make me confess to a crime. To confess to a crime. And the only reason he did it, I'm from the projects. You know, my parents are drunks. And after the 10th bowling pin hit me, I got ready to say I committed the crime. Mother and father come through the door drunk. And he said, oh, Mr. and Mrs. Peacock, how you doing? They never, bowling pins all on the floor. They wouldn't even saw them. And I learned in the hood, there's one way you live. In society, there's another way you live. But because I always go into the hood to do my ministry, I had to speak the language of the hood. But when white officers stop me, I let them know I'm well educated. But once they start getting belligerent, I immediately switch gears and go to yes, sir, no, sir. And they chill. So I use the technique to disarm them. That's the main reason why I do it, because I know they can shoot me and throw me over in the ditch, won't nothing be done.
And Eric, to your point, they do the same thing.
Right.
They do it differently.
Right.
Yeah.
You get BS. I was watching American Greed, and they had a guy who was a senator. He had been accused of mail fraud, stealing the money, the taxpayers' money. He was pardoned by Trump once he was given a jail sentence. When you listen to him talk, he said absolutely nothing. And I learned a term that the newscaster used in there. He said most American voters, most American people, they like low-level information. That we make decisions on low-level information. So the guys that I worked with in corporate America, they knew how to give low-level information. If you notice, doesn't have a lot of specifics, doesn't have a lot of twists and turns in it, just has a lot of minutia. And by the time you're figuring out the words that he's using, the language, because they figure you've come from a private school, right. I mean, a public school. So you're not, when I went to college, I was not used to debating and discussing. Disagreement lasted about 2 minutes, and both hands went up, and we were fighting. That's how long a discussion lasted. That was a discussion. Mm. Nowadays, it's a lot different. So I learned a lot from, I like watching Stephen A. And I know people feel a little differently one way or the other, but his discussion skills and learning, he can take minutia and spin it around. Then sometimes he'll come right in your face with it, but whatever it takes to get that desired outcome. So they do the same thing to us. And what's ironic is that many young Black males don't realize that they're being played. Mm. He's told you nothing. Then I asked, what did he really say he was going to do? I can't remember. There was no commitment. There was no date. There's no specifics. To me, that's a greater insult of my intelligence than if me saying, yes, sir, no, ma'am. When you don't give me any specifics, you don't give me any information. I knew no more than what I knew before you opened up your mouth and started talking, but yet you want me to do something for you. And this guy, when I saw him, he's just grinning. His father had a big sign, free my son, free my son. And I'm sitting there going like, man, we get played every day and don't even really realize what we're doing. So we've got to learn the multifaceted ways of communication and really getting our point across and making sure that we don't continue to settle for low-level information to try to make high-level decisions.
You hit on the nail. I feel like that was a hard enough hit that we can go out on that one. So like let's just get a recap of everything we've talked about, because we dropped a lot of gems. Like so before we leave, I see Leon, you have 3 books behind you. Are these your books that you've written, or are these just books?
Yeah, I remind myself to read Black Liberation, Kingdom Man, and Black Intellectuals, because I go into the hood and try to convince brothers to get back involved with kids through chess. Right. This keeps balance that when I meet the intellectual brother, when I meet the church brother, and when I meet the conscious brother, I know how to shift gears.
Right.
And what's that down there at the bottom? That seems to, yes, sir.
That Theta Psi. I made Omega Man of the Year. So I make chess tables for a living.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Okay.
Good
job.
That's
good stuff.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. I thought that's what it was, because that's the only one that I've seen. I was going to ask you, because I now that I see the bottom of it, so I should have known. But I was like, I know there's not another fraternity that's got another, symbol like that or similar to what y'all are all about. So okay, there we go. Okay.
You Omega?
Sir?
Are you Omega?
No, sir, I'm not.
Go down to a table.
Okay.
That's dope. Okay. That's dope. I like that. That's real creative. And you said you build chess tables?
Yeah, I'm a school teacher, but to get our kids ready for corporate America, chess is the fastest way.
Okay.
The way. And it allows brothers that have been in prison to get involved with their children.
Yeah, chess is a thinking man's game right there. They use that analogy a lot about
they do.
Or whatever. It's like, hey, look, this is not checkers. This is chess. You got to prepare for the long haul.
That's one of Denzel's favorite lines.
Yes, sir. And that's really the anthem for life, if you will. the very quick things that we do, the snap judgments, that's checkers. The long game is, like what Brother Leon was saying, he had to do what he needed to do to see the next day and switch the gameplay up a little bit.
Right.
But it's something that's learned, and it comes with experience, surrounding yourself with good people, good brothers that will teach you those things. And that's the chess about it. Not making the quick judgments, not going off on a whim, but methodically thinking things through, incorporating those principles, being a good character, all those things that we learn to not only internalize for ourselves, but for our young people coming up, our young men, our young ladies.
See, I like to use the word strategic thinking.
Yes, sir.
That allows you to plan for the day for an outcome tomorrow. And when you see the game from a bigger point, you say, okay, if I position myself here, how will I get over here? Getting people, and it makes you more accountable for your actions at the moment too. Because if you got a strategic plan, you can't be doing dumb stuff.
You're right.
Can't be doing dumb stuff.
You're right.
Good job, brother.
Gems, man. Gems. That's all I can say. Gems. It's just like you're speaking right to me, like, geez, man, stick to the plan. Like, it's that simple.
Father, brother, we got to give it to you. You're a young dad.
Hey, and crazy part is I'm not even a dad yet, man. I might be a stepdad soon, but I mean, hey, I'm not even a dad. I just want to make sure that I give my kids the best version of me I can give them every day. I feel like if you come with your best foot forward, hey, they can't, you try. I mean, like, just
amen.
And the great thing too is having those discussions now before they get here, because they're coming. They're coming, right? So go ahead and have those discussions now. Talk about money. Talk about, as Brother Peters mentioned, talk about money. Talk about the relationship and interpersonal relationship, especially now. Conflict resolution, anger management, mental stability. Educational goals. Just what are going to be those do's and don'ts? I went, and that's the part I mentioned before. I think I won't say I went heavy on the corporal punishment, but I dabbled in it. But I looked at it from a perspective that, I mean, we're just talking about the belt, some switches here and there, maybe an extension cord. But
he tried to slide that in there. Maybe an extension cord, maybe.
Back to how you strategically put that in there.
Maybe some,
he had a plan when he put that one in there.
But I looked at that stuff, and by today's definition, that's pretty harsh. But admittedly, I went with that, fellas, because I saw what it did for me, and I used myself as the barometer. I'm like, I didn't turn out a bad kid. I've never gone to jail. I've never smoked any weed. I haven't been disrespectful, in all things considered. I love my mama, respect women, is able to land a career and by God's grace, retire from that career by making the right decisions and doing the right thing. So I think I turned out all right. And I didn't believe that, a little bit of that rod was a bad thing. Now, that said, different strokes for different folks. And I respect people for what they do, because they may have been brought up a different way, like Brother Leon said, or taught or shown. But I figured, hey, it's not bad. I mean, I'm not doing some of the egregious and unthinkable things that I've seen people do in my job, seeing the remnants of. Nowhere near that. But I let them up a couple of times, just let them know that, hey, there are consequences. Right. Life's consequences could be worse.
Yep.
So I wanted to, and as a matter of fact, even having balance with that, because you can't whip them for everything.
No.
You can't, some things you got to talk them through. And it gets to a point to where the discussion is gonna turn into that. 'Cause you're not trying to whoop on no child forever. You know, even though they make you want to put hands on them. Uh, you but then that's when the wife comes in, or if there's a partner there in the relationship, that's where she kind of swoops on in and gives them that perspective from that other end. So again, going back to what Brother Leon was saying, there's a little balance that's there. So when my son's wife is crying or having an emotional moment, then he can slide in and be right there with her and feel that, have that empathy, and not be so hard and rigid and stoic, like you don't have any feeling at all. Man, stop it, brother. You got feelings. You got a little bit of estrogen in you.
Right.
You got more man than woman, but you got a little estrogen in you. That's proven. That's fact. So just maintaining that balance, man, and just doing the best you can, and listening to brothers like you to keep the learning, because I consider myself a lifelong learner. I'm still learning.
Lifelong learner. Well, fellas, it has been a great one. We have went over a lot of valuable components on just fatherhood and just trust and finance and just how to add value to these kids' lives, because we know that they need it. But for everybody that tuned in, just want to say thank you for tuning in, and just remember that everything that you've heard and everything that we said was our point of view. And until next time, take care.